And if I didn't hold on to that hope of a better life, I wouldn't have made it. We all have our narrative. We all have the story we tell ourselves. We all have the story we put out in the world.
Life is not about being perfect. Life is about how we respond when things are not perfect.
Because your characters develop as the story progresses.
Welcome to Keep Hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. And of course, now and always, keep hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, all the way from Santa Barbara, California, Carrie West. Carrie, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm thrilled. I can't wait to have this conversation.
We've already achieved something because you said that it's a freezing 50 there, and I said it's a warm 40. So I feel like we're coming together here. We're migrating towards each other, and that's where great things happen. When the atoms collide, good things happen. So I feel like we're getting somewhere. I want to jump right in, and I always encourage our guests to read the full bios, which we're going to do, which they will do, I should say. Sorry about that. As I mentioned before we came on, you're an author, which we'll get to. You're a speaker, which we may or may not get to because, someone will have to go hear you speak. And then we have a term that I want to dive into called a narrative coach. Now, as I said, I've met coaches before. I've spoken to coaches before. I've worked with coaches before. What inspired you to take the narrative approach, or why did that speak to you? How did that begin? And then we'll get into it.
This is going to sound like a really weird statement, but stories literally saved my life. I had very, very, very humble beginnings, and that's a way of saying they were terrible. And the way I could fall asleep that night, my self-care, as early as I can remember, was telling myself stories about my real parents who were looking for me. And if I didn't hold on to that hope of a better life, and that there was more than what I was enduring at that point, I wouldn't have made it. So they literally saved my life. And they encouraged me. I wrote journals. I kept journals of every story I could tell. And then I worked in the entertainment industry and started examining all the stories. Look, let's face it, stories are integral to a human being's world.
I want you to dig into that because I agree. And listen, I'm in sales. My primary job is sales, and I'm a parent first. I'm a husband second, or a husband first and a parent second, and I am a salesman third. However you look at it. Taking my relationship with my wife out because she doesn't buy into my stories. Like life, you're right. I agree with you, and I agree, and I think that if you're, and I think what you're also saying is like being a dreamer is important, right? And vision and things like that. Yet so many people say it's not worth it, or the story's not real. The story's not real, and if the story's not real, right? Like in your case, not to dig into too much emotion, but like maybe they're not looking for you, right? Right? And like so what do you do? Like what are you doing? So my question for you would be, how do you respond to that of, but it's not, it's real, and a story's a story, and life is life, and life is too serious for stories, and I don't have time for it because I'm too busy with other things.
Hey, we all have our narrative. We all have the story we tell ourselves. We all have the story we put out in the world. You just gave me 5 stories. People have also called me a story whisperer because I see stories everywhere. We have heroes and antagonists. If you're the protagonist of your story, there's antagonists and heroes and mentors and foils and love interests and the humor. It's all there. Our brains need to organize information and using a standard story structure of a beginning, a middle, and an end, and plots and patterns are perfect for how our brains operate. But when you have a personal story, the tendency is to think, "Oh, well, that's my life." And I guide people on saying, "Really? Does it have to be?" Listen, every day on a movie set, the first thing they start with before they start the cameras rolling is, "Where are my new pages? Where are my rewrites?" Because your characters develop as the story progresses. And it's even bigger in television when you have serial components. Your characters change as you get to know them. So why can't we do that in life? And I would argue it happens in life all the time.
So
You
so
change, you evolve. When you got married, you became a different person. When you had kids, you took on a father story.
do
Yeah?
you believe that I agree with you. So and I'm in. But do
Good.
you believe that the first step is that every person has to realize that they are the protagonist of an interesting and important and valuable story?
I don't know that I'd go that way to define it, but I think you have to have awareness first. You can't deal with anything you're not aware of. You need to bring that up
So how do you first get to the awareness?
through your patterns. When you start reliving a pattern, do you know how many people I've worked with who are constantly saying, "Why do I always date terrible people? Why am I always working for companies that don't appreciate my value? Why do I keep repeating this pattern?" That's a repeating plot line in my mind. So when you keep repeating, "Why do my kids always hate me? Why does my spouse always? Why does my partner always?" As soon as I hear that, it's like there's a story activated.
It's so interesting you say that because I was thinking the other day that and this is not a 100% certain all the time fact. So I don't want
Mhm.
there are obviously exceptions to every concept, but I think that there's an
Absolutely.
interesting connection and I wasn't planning on going here, but you just trickled it in my mind and I just, this is that it's my show so I can do whatever I
You
want.
can do what you want. Yep.
Um the there's an interesting connection between people who have inconsistent relationships and inconsistent professional lives. Like I think that there's an interesting and again, I'm not saying there are people who have terrible, inconsistent relationships and have long-term careers in the same company, and there are people who have terrible professional jumping around and amazing relationships. I'm not saying, but like, there's a
Mhm.
certain level of, and I think that you're right that the person has to realize that those are parts of their story. And by the way, part of their story might be, and the main character of their story might be the person who can't hold anything together. And like,
Yep.
by the way, that might be a pretty interesting story, and that might be
Yep.
interesting to them, and that might be how they live their best life.
Yep.
But what I love about what you're saying is that there's so much of Keep Hustling, so much we're building here in the 130 episodes or so that we've done is like everybody has the story and everybody's version of hustle is different. And if everybody, as you said, realizes that they're the protagonist of their story and they lean into that and they embrace it, they'll
Mhm.
write the new chapters. And
Yep.
so I want to go back to one other thing you said because I think it's super important. And some people call it pivot. I'm just going to say you called it rewriting new chapters. How important is it for people professionally and personally when they're developing their hustle or they're trying to achieve their goals to realize that you have the story written, but the and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm about to say something bold. If that is how it ends, you've done something wrong. If when you're 20 years old you're able to perfectly write out how the movie ends every day for the rest of your life, I'm going to say you've done something wrong. And that's how it ends up is my point. Like when you're 80, you should look back at 20 and say like, "Oh, I didn't expect that, but that chapter was amazing and I'm so happy I wrote it."
Yep. I would argue that you can start rewriting it when you're 80 years old.
No, I agree with you, but you can't rewrite
Yeah.
what you did when you're 20. That my point
No,
is the
no,
person
no,
who
no.
thinks that they have everything figured out, that's
Nah.
the worst version of the movie, right? You said every single movie
Absolutely.
has rewrites. Every single television show has rewrites. Those are fake. It doesn't matter. So
Mhm.
therefore, your life, what I'm trying to say is the person who had 80 looks back and says they never had to rewrite anything. It was exactly as they predicted. Then
I
then
w
they've done something wrong or they're lying. One of the two.
yeah, I would challenge that. I would challenge that. I mean, Do you really know when you're 20 what it's gonna be like? I mean, come on, COVID threw everybody into a tailspin. Nobody got the COVID story. Nobody. And when my stepson called me and said, "What do you do, with COVID? Have you ever experienced anything like that?" I said, "Dude, I've had so many experiences in life, the civil rights movement, the challenges in the 60s and the 70s. There's so many other stories. You learn to say, "Who am I in the face of these stories?"
And who
And
do I
you
become out of it?
exactly. Who do you wanna be as a result of this story?
That's it.
Yes,
That's it.
exactly,
That's it.
exactly.
I obviously it's a small version of what you're saying, but I think, you know, uh,
But you're not wrong at
I'm right.
all.
I'm not very insightful. I'm not usually a very insightful person in the moment. I usually try, I'm usually more retrospective, but I have a vivid memory when it was looking pretty bad here in New York. You brought up COVID, and
Mhm,
we had 4 children under the age of 10,
mhm,
under the age of 10, and our youngest was a few months old. And I vividly
mhm,
remember sitting with my wife, and we were both like, "What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Like, this is crazy." Bottle of wine, by the way, and
mhm.
and I remember saying to her, and I don't know where this even came into my mind to say, "This is a huge opportunity." Like, I don't know how long this is gonna last. All I know is that, like, most of the time when seismic events happen,
Mhm,
you have no idea. Like, this is the world is shutting down around us. Thank God everybody we know right now in our immediate family is healthy.
mhm.
Our kids kind of like each other, right? We're about to find out. Like, we kind of like our kids. We kind of like each other. Like, so, like, we get to create this experience for our kids. Now, by the way, I
Yep,
don't think anybody thought it was going to be as long or as
yep,
difficult as it was, but I think
yep.
you're right. Like, I mean, I look at the two probably most impactful seismic events of my life as they relate to the outside world, not me getting married, becoming a parent. Obviously, those are big, but like the outside to me, 9/11 and COVID.
Absolutely,
The biggest difference
absolutely.
between the two, 9/11 was a shock. I was a kid. I had no idea. We thought it was a joke. And then we looked back at it and said, like, that was pretty crazy. But being in my 30s, COVID, 4 kids, like, I don't want to say it was great because it wasn't, but like I kind of like that it's in my movie. Is that weird to say? Like, I've never
No,
said that
no,
before.
no,
And
no,
I hope
no,
that people
no,
don't like jump on us with this. But yeah,
no, no, because here's why. Here's why. Every story puts the protagonist through challenges. It's how you form who you're supposed to be at the end of the story. If you don't have these challenges and crises on your journey, you're not doing anything. You're just kinda doodling around and not doing a darn thing. But for you to be forged to be the best person, you are faced with challenges. You're given challenges so that you can see what story is activated, because your challenge will always bring up your story that's activated that's not serving you. And it's an opportunity for you to see it and say, I'm going to respond this way. Life isn't intended to be perfect. It's about us, how we respond when it isn't perfect.
life. I want to dig in on that. I love that. Life is not about being perfect. Life is about how we respond when things are not perfect. Did I get that right?
Correct. That's my quote at the end. You just stole it
Oh
from me.
gosh. Okay, you said it. You said in the middle. I didn't steal. You got to come up with another one, or
Ah,
I'll read it off this
ah,
page that I'm looking at of all your quotes. You can't do that. You said it. I didn't steal it. I didn't steal anything. I just repeated what you said. I'm a good listener.
you forced me there. No, I'm
That's what.
kidding.
Fine. It's my show. I said
It's your
already.
show. You get to do what you want.
We, what is the most important thing someone can do when if they are lucky enough, and they may not define it in the way that I'm about to say, but like to realize this is one of those defining moments. This is one of those moments where it's not going right. Like, it's not going right. The the tire's off the car. It's not even flat, and we're on the side of a road. Like, what what should everybody do then?
There's a couple of things. I'm a big proponent of what I call micro moments of change. Because what happens at these crisis moments is your amygdala and your cerebellum fire up to activate the fight or flight mode. When you go into that, when 9/11 happened, there was a collective in the world. You were a kid, you don't remember it. I unfortunately wasn't a kid. I remember it clearly. There was this collective airplanes stopped flying. I lived in LA at the time and I could see airplanes all the time. The sky was empty.
There
So
was
there
not a
was this
person on the city on the street in New York City. Not one.
exactly, exactly. There was this collective and our amygdalas and our cerebellum were fired up for fight or flight mode. It happens the same with COVID. What are we going to do now? When that happens, you got to take a breath and don't fire up your cerebellum and your amygdala, because when they're fired up, you're not thinking from an adult space. So a micro moment of change is just taking that breath and letting your brain settle so that you can trust that in your adult mind you'll have an answer. It may not be forthcoming right this red hot second, but it's there when you calm down. The other thing is, what did it trigger? What was that story that got activated? 9/11, everybody thought the world is screwed. If America can get bombed like that, we're in deep trouble. Oh my God. So it brought up this collective theme of the world's falling apart. We're all going to die. Now, like I said, I've got a few years on you. I can't tell you how many times we've had that collective theme come up when different things have happened in the world. So you got to stop that theme. You got to stop that end game story. So changing that is exactly why you need to stop and think in your adult mind. And then I'm reminded of the movie The Martian. Did you see that movie with Matt Damon?
Sure.
He was in the worst survival situation ever. And he just kept getting challenge after challenge after challenge. And what did he keep saying? You work the problem, people. He kept staying calm and saying, I'm going to keep working the problem. What actions can I take? What inspired actions can I take to move me through this? You did it with COVID.
I'll tell you what's so interesting, and it's it's like an ironic contrast. Everybody is the protagonist of their story, and
Yes.
therefore that should lead to a focus on the I. I am the
Yes.
protagonist of my story. I am the most
Yes.
important person in my story. Therefore, I am the most important person in the story.
Yes.
Yet, at the same time, what I'm hearing from you is at those collective aha, oh crap moments, oh whatever moments, a person really should realize that there were millions and millions and billions of stories before them and protagonists that were far more interesting or the same, right? Aha, we had so many of these moments. You think it's unique because of these nuances, but it's not unique. There were many, like you just said, there were many before and there'll be many more. So it's this interesting, I'm just hearing this interesting balance between a person feeling that the story is about them
Mhm.
and that the narrative is all about them, feeling very big,
Mhm.
versus you're really an ant because there's so many stories around you. It's just an interesting. I'm trying to process really how to internalize that, but that's kind of the message I'm getting here.
Absolutely. And again, unfortunately, we are in somewhat of a similar situation. It's not as dramatic as COVID or 9/11, but our world is very divisive. I've been watching Super Bowls forever, and the headlines are still about the halftime show. And it's like, seriously, can we not celebrate what the Seattle Seahawks did? But we're in a time of uncertainty in the world. So you're right. It's another one of these moments in the world where people are like, what do we do? And my recommendation, my suggestion is, what does this mean for you personally? Because honestly, you can't respond to how the whole world is responding. You can't respond to every headline. It'll drive you crazy. You can't respond to every health report that came out from the CDC, from the government. God, COVID just really upended everything, and how so many people had all these opinions and conspiracy theories came out. You could drive yourself crazy. The only story you can handle is your own.
That's what's great is you're the protagonist, but you're also the director, somewhat.
Exactly.
There's a producer
Exactly.
around there. There's other people, but ultimately you are the director also.
There's how many channels do we have now to stream through? How many stories? We can flip a channel every 5 seconds and have a new story. You can't follow all of them. You certainly can't direct and write them all. The only one you can direct and write is your own.
I
And
love
then
that.
see how it plays out with all the other stories going on. It's amazing to me how many times I see people shift in a huge way when they stop trying to fix the rest of the world and say,